Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And Blizzard's silence has finally been broken. We have some additional class changes coming in for the midnight pre-patch, as well as I'm going to be doing a review of the Feral Druid and my experience with that specialization so far on the midnight beta. And as always, if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, it is to my understanding that these changes to the pre-patch likely will also apply to the max level beta as well, so take that into consideration. We have some changes here for Hunter. I'm sure a lot of PP players wish that this was Marksman Hunter nerfs, but it seems like they're completely hands off with the current retail patch. It's just all about the future. But for Beast Mastery, Pack Tactics will now grant 25 focus up from 20 and increases focus generation by 75% up from 50. So surprisingly, Beast Mastery actually getting stronger. Survival Hunter, on the other hand, is having its focus costs increased on a varying amount of abilities here. Boomstick is going up from 30 to 50. Flame Fang Pitch is going from 0 to 20. Wildfire Bomb is going from 0 to 20. And Kill Command is going from 1 charge to 2 charges. So you're going to be able to weave in Tip the Spear stacks a little bit easier. I have seen at least PvE players saying that basically you were focus capped most of the time. So this is just to make sure that you're not just sitting at maximum focus the entire time. It's probably not going to have too much as far. It feels like a nerf, right? When you look at this, you see this and you're like, oh my God, why did they increase the cost? But it's probably not going to feel too bad ultimately with these changes. Now for Arcane Mage, there's been a lot of cheesy shenanigans going on with Arcane Mage and the Arcane Barrage build. And it looks like it's finally being touched here. Arcane Barrage is going to be nerfed by 15%. Baseline. The Arcane Tempo talent has changed position, and Intuition has been re-added to the talent tree and now grants 25% increased damage, which is casting a damaging spell has a 5% chance to make your next Arcane Barrage deal 50% increased damage and generate 4 arcane charges. So you remember that like reloading feel that Arcane used to have. It's probably good that this is coming back because it was feeling kind of janky with the new changes that have been added to it. But obviously the barrage isn't going to be hitting as hard, but you'll be able to proc the barrage more often. So hopefully it'll feel just more fluid, because I really liked Arcane moving into the War Within. So without this, it felt kind of bad. So it's nice that this is coming back. And then Arcane Singularity, which is just Arcane Salvo, gets increased by 2%, but also your next Arcane Barrage by 3% is being reduced by 50% in PvP combat. Now max level Arcane Barrage absolutely smokes players in one hit, and obviously in PvE it was becoming an issue, so just overall bringing that down into line. For Fire Mages, Scorch is being reduced by 35% in PvP combat, and this might seem weird if you're coming from retail World of Warcraft, like really Scorch was that OP? But all the classes redesigns are being implemented in this next midnight pre-patch, so this will likely apply at max level as well, which Scorch was absolutely banging, so this is likely a good target as well, at least for PvP, but obviously is not going to be nerfed in PvE. For Paladin, we have for Holy, Avenging Crusader damage is being increased by 30.7%, so likely Weapons of Order hero talent tree builds are going to be pretty good here on the pre-patch, and likely something that I'm going to try at max level. Crusader Strike is also getting a 30.7% increase. The 3% guy got promoted to the 30.7% guy. Is this a meme about Stranger Things? Is the person who buffs Paladin or whatever is in charge of Paladin, like are they what was it called, like something gate, conspiracy gate about Stranger Things, and about 7, the number 7, did they like, because there's no way this is an actual number, right? 30.7. This has to be like a meme. This has to be a meme. But Crusader Strike will also get 2 charges up from 1. So again, you'll be able to do more fluid gameplay, likely when you're in melee range, because I think Holy Shock and Crusader Strike are basically the same keybind now. They transform depending on your cooldown window. For Protection Paladins, Imbued Shield damage now correctly reduces magical damage by 10%. Previously, it was increasing damage by 10%. Hopefully, they can touch Rogue as well, because Rogue has a talent, I think, right now where it's like supposed to increase auto attack damage. It's actually decreasing your damage. I can't remember the name of the talent, but I remember people in my chat when I was testing out Outlaw Rogue last night talking about it. And then Crusader Strike also for protection is going up by 30.7% and will gain an additional charge. For Retribution Paladin, Crusader Strike will now have 2 charges up from 1. Although I don't know if you'll just be playing the auto attack, auto proc version of this anyways. So maybe this isn't going to be too big of a deal. For Rogue, an interesting spell is getting a 311% buff, Sinister Strike. So I'm interested to see how hard that it's a 311% increase on Sinister Strike. It's a very big number. And for Warlock, so Affliction and Demonology, Shadow Bolt is being reduced by 60% in PvP combat. That's a very sizable nerf. So these are likely, outliers that have to do with the pre-patch, but if this is applied on the beta as well, this is going to be a very significant reduction. And likely Warlocks will be playing Wither builds, I would imagine, at least as Affliction. You're going to be switching over to Hellcaller because, that's way too much damage, I think, off Shadow Bolt, unless it was that OP, and it's still really OP, which it could be. But that's it for the updates here so far in relation to the PTR and the pre-patch, likely also applying at least somewhat to max level, and I will test those live on my stream here tonight, so make sure you're subscribing to follow along with that. But now we're going to jump into the Feral Druid portion of the video and check out my, review of this specialization and everything that's going on with it. All right, so last night I had the pleasure of testing out some Feral Druid, thanks to some of my viewers gifting 5 subs to get me onto the specialization, because I had not spent a tremendous amount of time with it in direct gameplay. It was mostly theory crafting and training dummies, so this is going to be a review of the first-hand experience for the Feral Druid. Now, Feral Druid, a lot of players are rejoicing that Blood Talent is gone, which required you to incorporate regrowth in order to amplify your bleed damage. They've increased snapshotting visibility with Tiger's Fury by basically upping the animation. You can see that this rake bleed that I've applied to the target from stealth is now glowing orange, which means its damage is enhanced, and I shouldn't try to replace that with a bleed after my Tiger's Fury has faded. Now, that snapshot mechanic is still elevating the level of skill required to play this specialization over other melee DPS, and I've played every single specialization in the game, so I will tell you that even with this change, Feral Druid is still much more complex than the other options that I've currently tested, but it's still really fun, a little bit more straightforward as far as just get these big bleeds up, switch targets, get big bleeds up onto another target, and kind of just run around while using your instant regrowth heals after you spend your combo points. And you do have a substantial amount of healing. Damage fell a little bit on the lower end, but I don't believe that my build was completely the most optimal, and I definitely don't think my rotation was the most optimal, but it did feel like damage could potentially be an issue for you overall, just because it felt a little bit low. I feel like in PvE maybe this won't be the case, because they're giving you so many big, they're turning Feral Frenzy into an AoE Feral Frenzy. They give you a lot of AoE answers that will likely feel really powerful, but in PvP at least felt a little bit on the lower side, and I was playing full mastery for this playtest and this playthrough on the Feral Druid, and even despite that, just kind of felt a little bit flimsy, a little bit weak, but defense is really good. So if you were worried about survivability, Bear Form Frenzied Regen heals a lot, your instant regrowth procs heal a lot. They didn't prune your defensive, so you still have Bark Skin and Survival Instincts, so having 2 cooldowns is very good relative to a lot of other melee that had their defensive cooldowns kind of boxed together. And it still has a decent amount of utility. I really like things like Ursul's Vortex to pin casters down so they try and escape, and be able to prevent them by pulling them back into the target. So we didn't get too pruned on that front. We really only lost Renewal as a keybind, but they gave it as a passive, so you still have the healing. You just don't need to worry about managing it yourself. And with regrowth anyways as a heal, it really isn't felt as too much of a loss. Heart of the Wild, though, is changing dramatically in this patch. I just didn't even opt to select it in this instance because it no longer increases cyclone speed. So you can still go for cyclones like I've done right here, but it's going to be a lot slower. So I think in situations where you're the only one casting spells, it'll probably be more challenging in order to actually get effective CC. But in this lobby where I got a lot of caster DPS, they're soaking a lot of the interrupts so that I can actually have some time to actually get these cyclones in between the Tiger's Furies windows, which is usually the most ideal time to go for cyclones, at least on damage dealers, so that way you're not affecting your snapshotted bleeds, and you're kind of just waiting for that Tiger's Fury to come up, because that's the big window of time, which is now coming up. So we can use Ursul's Vortex to pin the mage to stop him from blinking and hold him out in the open for some Chaos Bolts, get full bleeds up with Tiger's Fury, and start tearing in. Now, Ray of Frost on a Frost Mage, that thing hits really hard. And I will say that my play testing this week on the beta has felt completely different than all of the prior weeks up to this point. And I don't know if that's because they're making tuning adjustments and they haven't been posted yet, or if they're not going to be posted at all, because the pace of the game has been shifting quite significantly week to week. And now maybe this is also the variance between players who haven't played their class for the first time or didn't equip their characters the most optimally, whether it's talents or stats. There's a lot of variables to take into consideration, but I will say that the pacing is starting to come together a lot more significantly, and it is a lot slower paced. You can see, like right now, targets spend more time not at 100% health to be able to recover, but they're also not, for the most part, getting instantly blasted down to 0%. So you have more time to react. And there's also no add-ons. So with the no add-ons there, with Feral Druid, most difficult thing I noticed as an adjustment was just tracking diminishing returns, which the current baseline frames have them. You can see this purple icon with a 4 right here on these enemy frames. That's the Cyclone diminishing return icon. I don't know who picked that one as the icon. Again, it would be nice if these were like adaptive icons, that when you're playing a class like a Druid, it showed a Cyclone. If you're playing a Warlock, it would show a Fear instead, and they were personally adaptable. So when you're playing, you know, like, oh, that means he's on Fear DR, and I know what that icon is. The Concussive Shot means Stun DR, and this brown magical swirly one basically means Polymorph DR, and that's how I've basically figured out, like, okay, those guys are off Stun DR so that I can get a full stun. Because you won't be able to otherwise. The other thing too is that you can't track interrupts, which I found actually to be kind of more interesting as far as mind games. I feel like players are more likely to make mistakes without having the foghorns blasting everything that's available at every millisecond in the middle of your screen. So it actually makes the gameplay a lot better when mistakes can happen, as opposed to everybody just being an AI add-on bot basically. So I actually really enjoyed that element of it, even for myself, just trying to like land kicks on casts, although I wish I could customize the cast bars a bit. They're a little bit small to see. That some of them are very fast like this here, some of them can be a bit, I wish I could like separate them and customize the cast bar a little bit separate from the health bar, and I feel like that's a change that likely PvEers would likely want to request as well. But for Feral Druid, as far as overall performance, at the moment it's kind of just average. It's not doing anything amazing, it's not doing anything completely terribly, but for the level of difficulty that's involved for it and the performance that you get out of that, I think that drags it down overall a lot. You feel like you're sweating a lot more as far as like where you're maintaining your resources and your utility and finding your crowd control, and you're not really rewarded as maximally for achieving that compared to some other specializations that can more or less kind of just bulldoze their way through games and win matches. So simply because of that, I would give it a lower rating, much less recommended rating. But that's simply just a numbers game. You just bring up the bleed damage or bring up the bite damage, depending on what types of builds Blizzard are looking to incentivize you to go after. But I wasn't terribly disappointed with it. It definitely still retains its identity as kind of this bleed spreader, cyclone, extra utility, off healing hybrid. So it definitely hasn't been like completely ruined. I think a lot of players are worried with the pruning that's come through that their class is going to be completely ruined. I don't think Feral Druid is one of those. I think that they did a good job of bringing down some of those extra levels of difficulty, but obviously if you're someone who liked Blood Talons, maybe you'll be upset by it, but I didn't like Blood Talons, so I personally enjoyed this, and maybe it'll actually get me to try Feral Druid more significantly than I have in previous patches and previous expansions, because it's the spec that I typically spend a lot less time than others, but now with these changes, maybe I'm going to be able to get into it a little bit more. And that's kind of just my quick rundown of the Feral Druid, my experience for it, the patch notes and the updates. And I'm very curious to see if there's any significant changes now that dungeon testing is underway, and that's likely going to give them a lot of data as far as being able to figure out what they want to do for the rest of the midnight beta cycle, because once the pre-patch comes out, then we got like a couple more months until the actual expansion. So it's going to put on a lot of pressure to try and get the game as good as it can be. But I will say that this week feels like it's gotten a lot better than the previous one. So if you haven't tested the beta in a while, or you gave up because it was frustrating, too buggy, and a whole bunch of other stuff was going on, right, with gear bugs and things like that, it's a lot better of a time. So if you're looking for something to do also with the pre-patch, if you feel like you've done all the content, beta is definitely a great place to go and just start learning your class, playing without the add-ons, getting used to the UI and the adjustments and the priorities and things like that. I think it is now is the time, and give them also some data in order to help bring the game to the best position they can be, because we're really trying to get Midnight to bring back and revitalize the community. So thank you guys very much for tuning into the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, the rundown of the patch notes, and the Feral Druid gameplay experience that I had. Your support is always appreciated, and I will see you in the next one.